Ladies and gentlemen, with a quorum of 76 people in the auditorium, I'd like to call this special town meeting of November 17, 2020 to order. Without hearing any objection, I'll waive the reading of the warrant and the constable's return, but for the record, the Abington Board of Selectmen have called this special town meeting and issued their warrant. Prior to the original meeting date of October 19, 2020, postcard notices were mailed to every residence of registered voters per our town bylaws. Copies of the warrant have been posted on the town website and made available at the post offices and the public library. And on October 19th, it was announced that that meeting would be postponed to this date of November 17, 2020. Additional notices were posted on the high school digital sign for the last 2 weeks. The town offices and the school department sent out emails to remind residents of tonight's meeting, and a robocall was also utilized to provide further public notice. Again, I'd like to call this meeting to order at 7:12 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Welcome to the second session of our special town meeting on this date of November 17, 2020. My name is Sean Riley. I'm the town moderator. It is my responsibility to preside over and regulate the discussion of tonight's articles, which appear in the special town meeting warrant documents that were made available to all residents prior to tonight's meeting. I want to thank you all for being in attendance here tonight, for your cooperation and assistance, especially with our public health guidelines. I especially want to thank our town officials and town employees who worked so diligently to prepare for this meeting, especially our health agent, Marty Golightly, town manager, Scott Lambiase, assistant town manager, Sue Moquin, all of the members of our esteemed finance committee, our volunteer ushers, cable TV crew, our school custodial staff, and of course, the town clerk, Leanne Adams, and all of her workers and staff. We'll be using some of the available technology that is built into this auditorium this evening. We'll try to display each article as we address them. However, please note that the printed warrant is the official warrant and contains the articles, so if there are any discrepancies between the content in the warrant and that which might appear on the screen, the language in the warrant or in the stated motion will control unless otherwise noted. I've been asked to inform you, in case of a need to evacuate this auditorium, exit doors are available on both sides in the far back, both sides on the middle aisle, and both sides at the left and right of the stage. Please allow me to also introduce our town clerk, Leanne Adams. I'd like to also introduce our town council, Mr. Greg Corbo from KP Law. Ms. Adams will be serving as the clerk of this town meeting, will be recording the wording of any motions, results of any votes taken by you, the resident voters. Attorney Corbo will be available to answer any legal questions that may arise, and together with the town clerk, they'll try to help the moderator make sure that we run this town meeting in accordance with proper procedure and as smoothly as possible. Seated to my left are members of the Abington Finance Committee. The Finance Committee is comprised of Abington residents who volunteer to review and analyze each article, which will be voted on at tonight's town meeting. Finance Committee Matt Sala will be speaking to you throughout this meeting. For rules, we ask you to abide by the same rules and guidelines during town meeting in order to allow you the opportunity to ask questions, share your opinions, and simply listen to debate. Tonight, please raise your hand if you would like to speak, and the moderator will recognize you at the earliest available moment. In order to remain socially distant, an usher will bring a wireless microphone to you so you do not have to leave your seat. Please state your name and your address before you speak so the town clerk can properly record the minutes of the meeting. Please make sure to keep all comments and questions relevant to the subject matter of the article being discussed. We do not allow any personal attacks or to bring personalities into debating of an issue. If a moderator believes that a speaker is straying from the issues, I will have to direct the speaker to limit that portion of their debate to the issue. We ask that all speakers limit their time at the microphone so that all others will have an opportunity to speak and be heard. Pursuant to CDC and public health guidance, and for many of tonight's voters, I will ask that you vote by raising your hand tonight instead of using voice votes. I would now like to appoint tellers. Well, you can take it from me. I've appointed 6 tellers that will help us count if we have any counts for the votes. They've all been assigned to each section of the auditorium. Please understand that in order to debate and discuss an article at tonight's meeting, the subject must be in the warrant in the form of an article. Tonight, the Finance Committee and others will be presenting their motions to either approve an article that was originally printed, or to propose amended wording with updated information, or to oppose an article, which we call passing over an article. If you have any questions about procedure or how to do something, please feel free to ask me. We will do our best to make sure that we all understand what we're voting on before we actually ask you to declare your votes. With that, if there's nothing else to be heard, I'd like to start right away with Article 1 of this special town meeting. The moderator recognizes the chairperson of the Abington Finance Committee, Mr. Matt Sala. Turn that on, Matt. Let me tell you what Article 1 is. Article 1 is a proposal to borrow the sum of $890,000 for the rehabilitation of the Central Street Bridge and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to execute any documents to effectuate the purposes of that vote. And just to clarify and to confirm, the Central Street Bridge that we're talking about is not the railroad bridge that people know near St. Bridget's. The Central Street Bridge is the bridge where the river flows under it between Washington Street and the police station. Matt.
Matthew Sala, 25 George Gillespie Way, Chairman of the Finance Committee. Good evening, everyone. For Article 1, the Finance Committee votes to approve Article 1 and that $890,000 is appropriated to design and reconstruct or otherwise rehabilitate the Central Street Bridge. That to meet this appropriation, the Treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, is authorized to borrow $890,000 under General Law, Chapter 44, Section 7(1), and that the Board of Selectmen is authorized to take any other action necessary to carry out the project. Any premium received upon the sale of any bonds or notes approved by this vote, less any such premium applied to the payment of the costs of insurance of such bonds or notes, may be applied to the payment of costs approved by this vote in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 20, thereby reducing the amount authorized to be borrowed and pay such costs by a like amount.
Thank you, Mr. Sala. Matt Lyons, who's on our computer tonight, if you could switch to the next slide. I think the motion language is right there that Matt just read. This motion is required, the language is required by bond counsel. Are there anything to be heard on the discussion whether to approve the borrowing of the $890,000? This will require at least a 2/3 vote. If not, all those in favor of approving Article 1 as presented by the Finance Committee's motion, please signify by saying aye. Please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. Put your hands down. All those opposed, please raise your hand. It's unanimous. Article 2. Article 2, 3, and 4 are roadway acceptance articles. Article 2 is Cook Way. Article 3 is Belcher Street. Article 4 is Crabtree Lane. As a real estate attorney, in being involved in 2 of the 3, I'm going to step down as moderator, and Deputy Moderator Bob Kelly will handle the debate and voting for Articles 2, 3, and 4. Mr. Kelly.
Mr. Sala, do you have a recommendation?
For Articles 2, 3, and 4, the Finance Committee defers these articles to the recommendation of the Planning Board.
All right, so we're going to take each one separately, even though the Finance Committee has deferred them jointly. So Article 2 is to see if the town will vote to accept the townway, the roadway known as Cook Way, as heretofore laid out by the Board of Selectmen, as such roadway is shown in the roadway acceptance plans dated February 13th, 2020, and prepared by Silver Engineering Associates, P.C., on file with the town clerk, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to acquire by gift, purchase, or eminent domain, or otherwise easements in said roadway, together with all related drainage, utility, and other easements, or take any other action relative thereto. Mr. Smith, Chairman of the Planning Board.
Articles 2, 3, and 4 all involve the last procedural vote required for the town to accept a new subdivision roadway as a public roadway. Each of the roads referred in Articles 2, 3, and 4 have been constructed in accordance with the approved subdivision plans, has been personally inspected by the town's professional consulting engineer, and final as-built plans have been approved by the board. The recommended vote to accept each of these 3 roads as new public ways will benefit the town because it allows us to qualify for state highway funding dollars each year. And it also benefits the homeowners on each of these roads because it confirms that our tax dollars will fund the future maintenance of their street in addition to all the other public ways.
So, Mr. Smith, do you have a motion?
The motion is to approve it.
All right, Mr. Smith motions to approve Article 3. Is there any discussion on Article 3? Seeing no discussion, yes. Would you please take a mic and identify yourself?
Rich Negrelli, 340 Diane Circle. Where is Cook's Way? And also, is there going to be any new construction on these streets?
Mr. Cookway is off Plymouth Street. Mr. Smith, can you answer the second?
Off Plymouth Street between Route 123 and Summer Street. Construction's been completed. Yes. The only change might be off the site, there is some work that they might be doing on a different street.
Any more discussion on Article 2? Hearing none, a majority vote will pass this. So all those in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed? Unanimous vote. All right, Article 3 is to see if the town will vote to accept as a townway the roadway known as Belcher Street, as heretofore laid out by the Board of Selectmen, as such roadway is shown on the roadway acceptance plans dated February 13th, 2020, and prepared by Silver Engineering Associates, P.C., on file with the town clerk, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to acquire by gift purchase or eminent domain or otherwise easements in said roadway, together with all related drainage, utility, and other easements, or take any other action relative thereto. Mr. Smith, you have a recommendation?
The recommendation is to approve the article for the same reasons stated before.
Mr. Smith motions to approve Article 3. Any discussion on Article 3? Yes, could you please identify yourself?
Martha Kraft, 175 Damon Road. I'm just wondering, it says by gift, purchase, or eminent domain, how are we acquiring all of these 3 roads?
Gift. Right? We're acquiring them by gift.
It's all gifted, and we pay nothing for that.
Right. Any further to be said on Article 3? Hearing none, again, this is a majority vote to pass. All those in favor of Article 3, please raise your hand. All opposed? It's unanimous. I haven't read Article 4 yet. I have an audience in the back giving me cues, and he's off cue. Article 4, to see if the town will vote to accept as townway the roadway known as Crabtree Lane, as hereto laid out by the Board of Selectmen, as such roadway is shown on the roadway acceptance plans prepared by SciTech, Inc., dated February 24, 2020, on file with the town clerk, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to acquire by gift, purchase, or eminent domain, or otherwise easements in said roadway, together with related drainage, utility, and other easements, or take any other action relative thereto. Mr. Smith, do you have a motion?
Yes, I make a motion that we approve Article 4. The planning board recommends the approval of the article. There is one comment that I'd like to make. There were several questions received by both the planning board and the Board of Selectmen regarding the emergency access cut-through area on Crabtree Lane. A vote to approve Article 4 will make no changes to the current restrictions to vehicles in that area, and no changes are presently contemplated. In the future, if changes were to be proposed, it would likely require a vote of approval by the planning board and/or the Board of Selectmen, and possibly another vote by the future town meeting.
Yes. Microphone.
Hi, Jackie Abrams, 71 Colonial Road. Just a question related to this transfer to town property, if there's any impact to the children who bicycle or walk to school via that. Would there be any changes in regard to access for strollers, bicycles? It's already closed to cars, so I'm just trying to understand the change and what it means for residents.
There would be no change.
Right, there's no change. It just means we're accepting it as a road of the town, that it meets the town's conditions, and we can return the bond to the person who built the road.
Just because there's been some changes physically in there lately, that makes it seem like the access point's denied to strollers and bikers and walkers. So will there be any changes?
Well, that's not
Okay.
an issue for this article.
All right, thank you.
Any other comments on Article 4? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 4, please raise your hand. All those opposed? The article passes unanimously.
Pretty good, Mr. Kelly. All right. Moderator recognizes Mr. Matt Sala for a motion.
Excuse me. At this time, the Finance Committee moves to bring forward Articles 16 through 24. It is critical that we ensure that tonight's town meeting votes on these 9 articles, as they all relate to critical funding and expenditures for the continued operation of town departments and services for the current fiscal year. The remaining 14 articles require discussion, and some may require extended debate. It is important that these financial articles be addressed first, and then we can spend the rest of the evening to allow for the appropriate debate for the zoning and other articles.
So according to our bylaws, Mr. Sala makes a motion to bring forward Articles 16 through 20, 16 through, where are we? 16 through 24, which are the 9 monetary articles. We'd like to take care of those before we head into the zoning discussions. Is there any question or any comment on that motion? Otherwise, all those in favor of bringing forward Articles 16 through 24, please raise your hand. All those opposed, please raise your hand. It is unanimous. So we will start now with Article 16. 16 is to see if the, and, sorry, yeah, we did already get Article 16. Good job, Mr. Lyons. Article 16, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate a transfer from available funds, borrow, or otherwise provide the sum of $68,000 to fund the bio package and agreement that was made between the Board of Selectmen and the police chief. Mr. Sala.
The Finance Committee moves to approve Article 16 as printed in the warrant to raise and appropriate the cost for the exit agreement with the Abington Police Chief in the sum of $68,000.
Finance Committee makes a motion to raise and appropriate the $68,000 requested in Article 16. Is there anything to be heard on Article 16? If not, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. All those opposed? The ayes have it. Article 17, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate a transfer from available funds, borrow, or otherwise provide the sum of $15,000 to fund a conversion from a position of the Board of Health assistant from a part-time position to a temporary full-time position and provide the board with additional assistance with regulation oversight and other administrative functions, or take any other action relative thereto. Mr. Sala.
The Finance Committee moves to approve Article 17 and to raise and appropriate the sum of $15,000 as printed in the warrant to increase a part-time position to a full-time position in the Board of Health for the remainder of fiscal year 21.
Anything to be heard on this article? If not, all those in favor of the, oh, sorry, question.
Martha Kraft, 175 Damon Road. Did I hear this correctly, that you've dropped the word temporary and made it a full-time position now?
That is correct. What the purpose of this is, the Board of Health, as you can imagine, given what we're going through this year, has a lot of extra work to do this year. They had a temporary employee that we are bringing up to full-time for, like, from now through July. In next year's budget, we'll address whether that goes back to being a part-time position or remains a full-time position. This is literally just for now till the end of June.
Okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, the definition of temporary is for this fiscal year.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kraft. Anything else to be heard on Article 17? If not, all those in favor of the Finance Committee's motion, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your hand. It's unanimous. Article 18, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds, borrow, or otherwise provide the sum of $70,000 to purchase and install 2 new boilers for each of the Fire Station 1, Fire Station 2, and any cost incidental or relative thereto, or to take any other action relative thereto. Mr. Sala.
The Finance Committee moves to approve Article 18 as printed in the warrant and to raise and appropriate the sum of $70,000 for boilers in Fire Stations 1 and 2.
Finance Committee makes a motion to approve Article 18 as presented in the warrant. Any discussion, any questions on Article 18? Sir, there's a microphone coming from behind you.
Thank you. Mike DeMarco, 30 Karen Lane. I was just wondering, in the fire department, weren't we doing a study to see if we were going to do a central fire station and if Fire Station 2 is necessary? So my question is, why are we going to spend money unless that study's going to be out another year or two?
Thank you, Mr. DeMarco.
As the chief makes his way forward, I will let you know, for anyone that hasn't watched the recordings of our finance committees, we had a lot of discussion over that very same topic ourselves. As the chief can explain as well, the study of a central fire station, any actual moving into a central fire station is still several years away. The boilers in the current fire stations have been breaking down and costing the town money each time they break down, in addition to costing the firefighters of the town significant health and warmth during those times. So there was a lengthy cost analysis that we went through before the Finance Committee agreed to approve this article, or recommend to approve this article. And I'll let the fire chief speak as well.
Thank you, Mr. Sala. Sir, did that answer your question? He actually answered it very eloquently. But
To become, how many years away is that study going to take to be completed?
That's a good question. The study is complete. The next stage would be to present something at a future town meeting to see if the town has an appetite to construct a central fire station. I have no time frame on that. In a perfect world, let's assume that they said yes at the next town meeting. We're still several years away before that would even physically be built.
Thank you, Chief Nuttall. Thank you, Mr. DeMarco. Anything else to be heard on Article 18? If not, all those in favor of approving Article 18 in the Finance Committee's motion, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your hand. It's unanimous. Article 19, see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, transfer from available funds, borrow, or otherwise provide the sum of $11,000 to purchase and equip a brush truck for the fire department, with the remaining 95% to be provided by grant from FEMA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Mr. Sala.
The Finance Committee moves to approve Article 19 as printed in the warrant and to raise and appropriate the sum of $11,000 for the town's 5% obligation to receive a FEMA grant for a new brush truck.
Finance Committee makes a motion to approve as stated in the motion for Mr. Sala. Any questions or anything to be heard in Article 19? If not, all those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed, please raise your hand. It's unanimous. Article 20, see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds the sum of $30,000 to pay the remaining balance for paving the senior center parking lot project and anything incidental or related thereto. Mr. Sala.
The Finance Committee moves to approve Article 20 as printed in the warrant and to transfer from the program income account the sum of $30,000 to pay for the cost of the senior center parking lot.
Finance Committee's motion is to approve Article 20 as outlined by Mr. Sala. Any questions on Article 20? If not, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your hand. It's unanimous. Article 21 is a 5-part article. I won't read all 5 parts. They are printed in the warrant for you. These are presented by the Board of Assessors and the Treasurer's Collector. I know there's a motion. What is the motion of the Finance Committee, Mr. Sala?
The Finance Committee defers to the recommendation of the Board of Assessors.
Is there someone from the Board of Assessors available tonight? I know someone was quarantining himself. If not, we'll accept a motion from Mr. Sala to put this on the table.
The motion is to approve Article 21.
Motion is to approve Article 21, and I don't know if the town manager or Mr. Sala wants to explain the purpose of these 5 sections, which would be approved with a positive vote. Scott, if I can have someone bring a microphone down to you, it might be a little bit easier for you and me. Got to get our microphone people up on their feet, ready to go.
A little younger and a little lighter. Yeah, so these are just some guidelines that or guides put out by the state as far as minimum and maximum amounts of money. So it makes it easier for our senior citizens to be eligible to receive a rebate in their taxes.
Yeah, since I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, it basically is increasing some of the exemption amounts for the senior citizens in our town to essentially take the tax burden off some of our seniors. Your vote to approve Article 21 would do that in all 5 examples of the exemption upgrades. Are there any questions for Article 21? If not, all those in favor of approving Article 21, the motion to approve as presented, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, please raise your hand. It is unanimous. Article 22, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate transfer of available funds, borrow, or otherwise provide the sum of $12,000 to purchase and equip a greens machine and for the sum of $18,645, and to purchase and install replacement protective netting for the Strawberry Valley Golf Course, or to take any other action relative thereto.
The Finance Committee moves to approve Article 22 as printed in the warrant and to reassign Article 7 of the fiscal year 19 special town meeting for the purposes laid forth in Article 22.
Mr. Sala makes a motion to approve Article 22 with the source of funds identified in his motion. Is there any questions on Article 22? If not, all those in favor of approving the motion from the Finance Committee, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, please raise your hand. It is unanimous. Article 23, see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate transfer of available funds, borrow, or otherwise provide the sum of $416,487 to supplement the FY21 school department budget and anything incidental or related thereto. Mr. Sala.
The Finance Committee moves to approve Article 23 as printed in the warrant and to raise and appropriate the sum of $416,487 to supplement the FY21 school budget.
Thank you, Mr. Sala. And as I understand it, just for informational purposes, this is funding some of the monies that were cut from the school department at the beginning of the year. If you want to explain that further.
So when we were preparing the budget for the June town meeting, we predicted that state revenue would decrease for the town by approximately 10%. So we prepared each of the department's budgets differently than we would have otherwise had the pandemic not hit. The state ended up level funding the budget, same as last year, so we have had more state money coming in, and this is essentially giving the school's portion of that money to the school department to continue to use during this fiscal year.
Thank you, Mr. Sala. Is anything to be heard on Article 24? If not, all those in favor, Article 23. All those in favor of approving Article 23 in the motion by the Finance Committee, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. All those opposed, raise your hand. It is unanimous. Article 24, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate a transfer of available funds, borrow, or otherwise provide the sum of $22,000 to fund a settlement agreement for an injured employee to take any other action relative thereto. Mr. Sala.
The Finance Committee moves to approve Article 24 as printed in the warrant and to raise and appropriate the sum of $22,000 to fund a settlement agreement between the town and an injured employee.
Mr. Sala makes a motion to approve the article as presented. Is there anything to be heard on this article? Otherwise, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed? It is unanimous on Article 24. Thank you. That takes care of the money articles. So now we would go back to Article 5. Article 5 through 14 are some of the zoning articles tonight. Article 15 is a general bylaw. Article 25 is a general bylaw. Article 26 is a charter revision. And Article 27 is a zoning bylaw. Moderator recognizes Mr. Alex Bezanson from the Board of Selectmen.
Thank you. Alex Bezanson, 761 Randolph Street, and a member of the Board of Selectmen. I make a motion to refer the proposed zoning amendment proposed in Article 5 through 14 inclusive to the Planning Board for further study and review, and for the Planning Board to consider the resubmission of these articles for deliberation at a future town meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Bezanson. If I could explain the purpose of Mr. Bezanson's motion. Articles 5 through 14 are the subject of his motion are proposed zoning amendments. Some are housekeeping, some have more substance to them. We can go through all of them tonight, and each one of them needs a 2/3 vote to pass. If they don't achieve a 2/3 vote, they will not pass. There's been some discussion in our town about discussing some of these zoning amendments in a required smaller town meeting because of the coronavirus pandemic. That is the purpose of Mr. Bezanson's motion. If you would like to proceed with addressing Articles 5 through 14, we will do so if you vote no to his motion. If you would like to take Article 5 through 14 and set them aside and allow the Planning Board to resubmit at a future town meeting, perhaps when the pandemic is behind us, and let's hope that that is soon, a positive vote would put those articles aside for a future town meeting. The reason we are doing that is if you vote no across the board, the Planning Board and the Building Department cannot resubmit a zoning article within 2 years unless they go through a process if you take negative action. So this action to refer the article for further study is not negative action or what they call unfavorable action, and it would allow those to be set aside and could be brought forward when a better time for a better town meeting is available. I hope I explained that correctly. Town council gives me a head shake. So Mr. Smith, Chairman of the Planning Board, Wayne Smith.
The town updated the master plan in 2018, 2019. In 2019, the town engaged Dan Crane to review the zoning bylaw and ensure that it reflected the goals and objectives of the master plan. During 2019, Dan Crane spoke with zoning board members, the building inspector, zoning enforcement agent, along with other members of the community. On April 2019, the board held a public meeting to discuss potential zoning changes. On June 2019, the board held a public hearing to discuss proposed zoning bylaw changes put together by Dan Crane. From June 2019 to December 2019, the planning board had an item on their agenda to discuss, review, or hear from anyone who wanted to propose a zoning bylaw change. The proposed bylaw changes were prepared for the town meeting and were to be heard at the board's June 1st, 2020 meeting, until a last-minute change to the warrant put all the proposed zoning changes off to the next town meeting due to the Corona-19. The town felt it was safer to just vote on money articles at the June 2020 meeting. It costs the town $1,000 every time we run all these ads again, this will be, if we do it again, it'll be $3,000. We held another hearing prior to this town meeting so that we would have this for you this evening. All of these items have been discussed thoroughly with the Board of Selectmen and everyone else that we could talk with. It's something that was required, the town wanted to do almost 3 years ago and wanted to spend $75,000 to do this. We had it done for much less than $20,000 with Dan Crane, and I think he's done an excellent job. And all these things have been gone over a number of times. I think tonight we can vote on these things. Most of them do not make much change. If you think there's something that makes a tremendous change, you can vote it down.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith speaks in favor of, or objecting to Mr. Bezance's motion. He would like to proceed with discussion, debate, and vote on Articles 5 through 14. The motion on the floor is to refer them to the planning board for a later town meeting. Mr. DeMarco. Chris.
Mike DeMarco, 30 Karen Lane. I agree with Alex. This should be delayed because we really don't have that many people here to vote on changes on the zoning. I mean, some of these articles have major implications. Some, like you say, are just maintenance, but Article 12, Article 13, they're pretty major changes to this town zoning, which I personally believe should be in the
Thank you, Mr.
zoning
DeMarco.
should stay.
I believe, was there a hand over here? No? Anyone else like to speak on this motion? Mrs. Mays.
Ms. Mays.
Ms. Mays.
I would like to, I'm in favor of Alex's motion. I appreciate all the work the zoning board has done, but I think I can speak for a lot of the people in this room. We've been a little preoccupied for the past 10 months, so if more information was out there, people may not have seen it. We've had a lot going on in town. I also want to thank the health agent for taking care of the town, and of course our first responders. They've been doing a heck of a job while we've all been trying to deal with things. So I want these to be deferred, referred, whatever the word is, so that it's a better time for the townspeople to participate.
Thank you, Ms. Mays. This is a motion to refer the proposed zoning amendments on Articles 5 through 14 inclusive to the planning board for further study and review, and for the planning board to consider the resubmission of these articles for deliberation at a future town meeting. That is the current motion on the floor, which requires a majority vote to approve that. Anything else to be heard on this motion? The question is, can I give you a little overview on what each article is? Well, in short, Article 5 is an update to the sign bylaw, which requires commercial signs to include the street address on the sign to help our first responders. Article 6 is an update to the definition, or adds the definition of swimming pool to our zoning bylaw. Article 7 adds the definition of accessory apartment to the zoning bylaw. Article 8 adds a phrase regarding accessory apartment affidavit into the existing bylaw. Article 9 deals with lots transected by a zoning district line. Instead of moving it 50 feet, you can move it 100 feet. Article 10 deletes an old note from the Technology Business District, which was removed years ago. It's housekeeping. Article 11 was a proposal for site plan revision, oversight and penalties, which I believe the planning board was going to pass over if it moves forward because they believe it's not ready for approval. Article 12 is another somewhat of a housekeeping, requires 50 feet between multiple buildings on a lot if it was a condominium, apartment, or commercial complex. It already is required 50 feet, but it's correcting some of the wording. Article 13 is a change to what we call the Muppet District, the Multiple Planned Project Development District. It would reduce the minimum lot size from 10 acres to 3 acres, and it would allow the 200-foot frontage requirement to be changed by special permit to the planning board instead of variance to the zoning board. Article 14 was a proposal to update the vegetation section of our zoning bylaw, but that too, I believe, was going to be motioned to pass over because they want to continue to work on the wording for that article. That is a quick, brief summary of those 10 articles. Now, if this motion passes, I just want to be clear, we still have 4 articles to be debated tonight. Article 15 is the stormwater bylaw, which is a general bylaw. Article 25 is the creation of the Affordable Housing Trust, which is a general bylaw. Article 26 was a small charter revision regarding the police chief contract language. And Article 27 is the marijuana license question. That's a zoning bylaw. This motion will not affect those 4 articles. We will still move forward with debate and discussion on those. So again, Mr. Bezansen's motion to refer Articles 5 through 14 is on the floor. Anything else to be heard on this? This gentleman right here, the microphone's coming from behind you.
Thank you, Tom Greenwood, 959 Hancock.
Tom, sorry, what was your last name, Tom?
Greenwood,
Greenwood, thank you.
yes. So you're talking about deferring these until the next meeting, or what would you foresee there?
It doesn't recite which meeting. The planning board could resubmit at the next meeting or a meeting down the road. The uncertainty of the coronavirus has created, obviously, a lot of uncertainties for when we try to call these town meetings. Town meetings are exempt from the governor's 10-person social gathering limit. So what we've been doing, and again, I want to thank Marty Golightly and the entire Board of Health, we are trying to conduct these town meetings as safely as possible by keeping you people apart from each other. Everyone, thank you for wearing your masks, trying to keep these meetings as short as possible so we're not in an enclosed space at a dangerous level. We're broadcasting live at home for those who want to watch, and it will also be replayed later. I want to thank our cable TV crew. So to answer your question, it'll be up to the planning board. Any zoning amendment has to go through the planning board, and the planning board has to have a public hearing before it can get to the town meeting for a vote. Any zoning amendment has to have a 2/3 approval from the town meeting. So this motion would put it back basically to start it over again. The planning board would have to have another public hearing and then put it in a warrant for a future town meeting. Whether that is June of 2021 or the fall of 2021, we just can't predict the future.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. There's a gentleman in the rear.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Tom Dion, 27 Mulberry Drive. I'd like to make a amendment to Mr. Bezansen's motion. I think Mr. Smith spoke well, as you did, on the nature of Articles 5 through 12. They're more
14.
housekeeping. They're more housekeeping, and I think, I would make a motion that we consider those at this meeting. I would, however, and maybe it's in the form of another motion, I do move that we pass over Article 13, because it does have ramifications for the people that live up in West Abington and on Hancock Street.
Hold on, Mr. Dion, you're ahead of the game on that motion.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but we don't want to talk about individual yays or nays on articles. But was your amendment to change Mr. Banson's?
To amend Mr. Bezansen's motion, instead of passing over 5 through 13, was it?
14.
14. I would like to bring forward Articles 5 through 12.
All right, if I can just help you with the terminology, your motion would be to refer Articles 5, you would like to refer Articles 13 and 14 to the planning board for future study, which would allow this town meeting to proceed with discussion and debate on Articles 5 through 12.
To dispose of the housekeeping articles that, as Mr. Smith said, I think they've done their due diligence in looking at those.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dion. No need for a second, but thank you for your input. So Mr. Dion's amendment would be taken up first. Mr. Dion is moving that the motion should be to refer Articles 13 and 14 only to the planning board for further study and review, and for the planning board to consider resubmission of those 2 articles for deliberation at future town meeting. That would result us moving forward with the discussion and vote on Articles 5 through 12. Is there anything to be heard on Mr. Dion's motion to amend? What we'll do is first take a motion, see if that amendment passes. If it does, that passes. We'll then go to Mr. Bezansen's motion, which allows more to be referred. More articles we'll ask. That is a separate question. So Mr. Dion's motion to refer only to Articles 13 and 14 is on the floor at this point in time. Any questions? Mr. DeMarco?
Isn't Article 14 a housekeeping one? I'm not sure.
It is rewriting that section of vegetation. It's basically regarding street trees and things like that. It is new language, and I have been informed by the planning board that their motion will be to pass over that article because they do want to spend more time on it and resubmit.
Okay, let me ask you this on Article 12.
And Mr. Smith, you tell me if I'm wrong when I speak for the planning board. Yes,
On
sir.
Article 12, is that taking the authority of the zoning board of appeals away and giving it to the planning board to approve in a site plan?
No.
It's not, okay.
So the motion currently is we're going to take two votes. One vote is going to be Mr. Dion's motion to refer Articles 13 and 14 only. We'll see if that passes. Then we're going to follow up with Mr. Bezanson's motion, which essentially would be to also defer Articles 5 through 12. And we'll see if that passes. Understood? So we'll start, okay. We'll start with Mr. Dion's motion first, which is more limited in scope. Mr. Dion makes a motion to refer the proposed zoning amendments in Article 13 and 14 only to the planning board for further study and review, and for the planning board to consider the resubmission of these articles for further deliberation at a future town meeting. All those in favor of referring Articles 13 and 14, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. Put your hands down, and if you're opposed, please raise your hand. The ayes have it. Articles 13 and 14 shall... What's that? No. You need 7 people to challenge the count. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, we're going to count to see. Now, this is to refer Articles 13 and 14 to the planning board. All those in favor, please stand and remain standing until your counter is finished with your section. I have 6 counters, 1 for each section of seating. Terry Mays. What is the vote for? If you're standing, okay, Mr. Negrelli, if you're standing, you are approving the referral of Articles 13 and 14 to the planning board, so they will not be voted on tonight. If you are standing, you are voting yes to defer Articles 13 and 14 to the planning board for future study and review. Ms. Mays, in addition to that section, would you please count those on the stage? Mr. Wakeland, in addition to your section, please count anybody on the floor except for the town council and town manager. Yes, people on stage. I'm not voting. You're going to, Steve, you're doing people sitting on the floor. Let's start with back left. Is that Mrs. Smith? 5. In the middle is Ms. Stark? 14. To the right, where's Marty? 6. Over here, Ms. Mays, where'd you go? 13. In the center was Mr. Dion? 12. On the right, 6. Okay, please be seated. If you oppose the motion to refer Article 13 and 14, which means you would like to debate Article 13 and 14 and vote tonight, please rise and remain standing. What's that? Did I say something wrong? No. Sorry? A no vote right now would be not to refer Articles 13 and 14 to the planning board. It would be to move forward and vote on them tonight. Okay? I'm sorry if I said that wrong. A no vote is to basically allow discussion tonight and votes on Article 13 and 14, and is to not refer it to the planning board for a future town meeting.
Point of information. If this article, what we're voting on right now passes, that we're referring only 13 and 14, and then we come to the original article on the floor, the whole thing could be referred. Is that correct?
No, I'm going to limit that to only 5 through 12. So we're voting on Articles 13 and 14 right now. We just took the yes vote to refer those to the planning board. This is now the no vote, not to refer them. Let's talk about these tonight. Articles 13 and 14 only.
Okay.
Is that a question, Rich?
It is a
Can
question.
I just finish my,
Hold on, everyone sit down, we'll revote this. Sorry?
can we have discussion first?
Discussion first? Yeah, sure.
Okay, because the original vote was to refer the whole thing. So what does this article that we're currently speaking on, how does it affect the original motion, please?
After consultation with town council, he's suggesting, we're going to take Mr. Bezanson's motion first. We're going to take the vote to defer all of them. If that passes, we're deferring all of them. If it does not pass, then we'll take Mr. Dion's vote. We'll do it the reverse, and we'll have a more limited vote to only defer Articles 13 and 14. I'm sorry for the confusion. That's how we will handle this, so it will proceed. Sorry, this was meant to save some time here, I think. So, all those in favor of Mr. Bezanson's article to refer Articles 5 through 14 to the Planning Board for further study and review, and for the Planning Board to consider for resubmission of these articles for deliberation at a future town meeting. If you are in favor of deferring those Articles 5 through 14, please rise to vote yes and remain standing until you are counted, until your counter asks you to sit down. Mr. Smith? Where are we? Ms. Stark? 17. Where are we? 6? 6. Mr. Wakeland? 7. Who's Mr. Dion? 10. Ms. Mays? 4. Please be seated. So 3, 17, 6, 7, 10, and 14. If you are opposed to referring these articles and would like to discuss all of those articles and vote on them tonight, please rise and vote no. Please rise and remain standing. Mr. Smith? 2. Stark? 1. 3. 5. Tom? 6. 12. Please be seated. 6, 11, 17. I have 47 to 29. The final tally is all those in favor 47, all those opposed 29. The motion carries. So Articles 5 through 14 shall now be referred to the Planning Board for further study and review. That being said, the remaining articles will be Articles 15, 25, 26, and 27. So please turn to Article 15, the Stormwater Bylaw. Article 15 is to see if the town will vote to amend the Abington general bylaws to enact a new stormwater bylaw as set forth below or in the warrant, and to authorize the town clerk to assign such numbering as is appropriate to bring said bylaw into conformance with the existing codification or take any other action relative thereto. Mr. Sala.
The Finance Committee defers Article 15 to the recommendation of the Planning Board.
Finance Committee defers to the Planning Board. The moderator recognizes Chairman Wayne Smith of the Abington Planning Board for a recommendation and motion on Article 15.
Planning Board moves that Article 15 be passed.
Planning Board makes a motion to approve Article 15 as presented in your warrant. Are there any questions regarding, this is an amendment to the general bylaw and only requires a majority vote to approve. Any questions on Article 15? There's one up back, there's two up back.
Ann Manning, 34 Orange Street. I would just like to know how much of the stormwater bylaw changes proposed by the planning board overruled zoning bylaws.
Did you hear that, Mrs. Smith? Is the answer, it doesn't? Yes, it doesn't. Anyone qualified to explain this? I can, but I don't want to be the person who does that. Well, let's see what the next it does not, this actually enhances the stormwater protection in the town of Abington. There already are stormwater protections if someone goes to the planning board for a site plan review or a commercial project, a large project. They have to submit drainage calculations and abide by DEP stormwater design standards. The town engineer reviews that. This, I believe, this bylaw also applies to other projects that might not be triggered by a planning board review. So if you owned a large piece of property, and I believe it only applies to property greater than an acre. If you owned a large piece of property and decided that you wanted to go start digging holes out in your way backyard, in your back 50, you need to get approval to make sure that what you're doing out there isn't going to create flooding problems for your neighbors. Okay? That's a very general statement, but this is an additional level of protection and regulation because stormwater is always a critical concern to neighbors. Sometimes good regulations make good neighbors. No further questions? Any questions on Article 15? Planning Board's motion is to approve Article 15 as presented. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed? It is unanimous. We move to Article 25. Article 25 is to see if the town will vote to accept the provisions of Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 55C, and to establish a trust to be known as the Abington Affordable Housing Trust Fund, whose purpose shall be to provide for the creation and preservation of affordable housing in the town of Abington for the benefit of low and moderate income households and for the funding of community housing as defined in accordance with the provisions of General Laws, Chapter 44B, and in implementation thereof, to see if the town will vote to amend the Abington General Bylaws for these purposes as set forth below, and which will include the establishment of a board of trustees to govern said trust and to authorize the town clerk to assign such numbering as is appropriate to bring said bylaw into conformance with the existing codification and to take any other action relative thereto. And the terms of the new bylaw are included in your warrant. I know that town manager Scott Lambiase has done yeoman's work putting this together, but Mr. Lambiase, being a non-resident, is not able to make a motion here at town meeting. So I believe Finance Committee is going to defer. Oh, you're going to take the motion. Yep. Go right ahead, Mr. Sala.
The Finance Committee moves to approve Article 25 as printed in the warrant.
Thank you, Mr. Sala. Motion is to approve Article 25. Mr. Lambiase, would you like to take a moment to explain a little bit about the benefits of this bylaw? Here comes Mr. Wakeland with a nice, clean microphone.
Yes, hopefully you all recall last year at town meeting, the community preservation appropriated some funds that would go towards an affordable housing trust. So what this does is actually establish the trust, and the work of the trust will be to go out and seek projects to create senior housing and affordable housing. So this is sort of the document that gives us the ability to do so. The next steps in this will be actually people will be asked to apply to the selectmen to be on this trust, and the selectmen will appoint them.
Thank you, Mr. Lambiase. Anything else to be heard on Article 25? There being no, oh, there's a question in the back there. Rich Smith's getting a workout. Moderator recognizes, I believe it's Mrs. Manning from Orange Street.
Ann Manning, 34 Orange Street. Will this work in conjunction with the state's 40B housing, or is this something separate?
This is separate from 40B housing. However, they may work in conjunction with someone on a 40B project. It may be a friendly 40B project, but this is not per se a 40B.
Thank you. Anything else to be heard on Article 25? If not, all those in favor of approving Article 25 as presented in the warrant as motioned by the Finance Committee, please signify by raising your hands. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your hands. The ayes have it. The majority passes. Article 26. Article 26 is to see if the town will vote to amend the town charter, section 5-1-1, relative to the appointment term for a police chief by striking the second sentence and replacing it with the following, changing it from, quote, there shall be a chief of police appointed by the town manager for an indefinite term, unquote, to there shall be a chief of police appointed by the town manager for such term as the parties mutually agree upon, unquote, or to take any other action relative thereto. Submitted by the town manager, Mr. Sala.
The Finance Committee defers to the recommendation of the Board of Selectmen.
Finance Committee defers to the Board of Selectmen. Mr. Damasio will grab a microphone and make a motion on behalf of the Board of Selectmen.
Kevin Damasio, 29 Orange Street, Board of Selectmen. I make a motion to approve Article 26 as presented.
Mr. Damasio makes a motion to approve Article 26 as presented. Just a slight change to the wording of the charter. This will take a 2/3 vote here tonight, and it also has to be confirmed at a future ballot box election by the voters of Abington. So this would be step one of that approval of the charter change. Any questions on Article 26? If not, all those in favor of approving Article 26 as presented, please signify by raising your hands. Thank you. All those opposed? It is unanimous. Move to Article 27. Just want to check what the next slide is. Yes. If you could, at the conclusion of this article, this will be the last article, if you could remain seated, and our ushers are going to ask you to exit in a section at a time so that we are not congregating in the doorways to try to keep our social distancing throughout the evening. Also, as you do exit, we ask that you continue to exit completely outside of the building. Do not congregate in the school hallway because we need to keep our school as clean as possible. This entire area will be fumigated after we leave in preparation of school to be held tomorrow morning. Also, if you could, if you do have any paperwork in your hands, copies of the warrant, please take them with you, deposit them in trash barrels, help us clean out this auditorium so the custodial staff doesn't have to do all the work that we're generating. And I'd also like to take a minute again to thank our cable TV staff and Matt Lyons, who's an Abington High School student who's running our board up here on the screen. Thank you, Matt. Article 27 is a zoning bylaw amendment, and as I do, I'm going to step down for this article. Mr. Kelly will handle the deliberation and voting on Article 27. Mr. Kelly.
Article 27, to see if the town will vote a change to paragraph 172-24.3, paragraph large D of the town zoning bylaws so that it may read as follows. Number of licenses. The number of recreational marijuana licenses and/or recreational marijuana delivery only retailers permissible to be located in the MOD shall be limited to 50% of the number of licenses issued within the town for the retail sale of alcoholic beverages and not to be drunk on the premises where sold pursuant to Mass General Law, Section 138-15. In the event that the 50% of said issued licenses shall not be in a whole number, the limit shall be rounded up to the nearest whole number. Mr. Sala, what is your recommendation?
The Finance Committee defers to the recommendation of the Planning Board.
Mr. Smith, Chairman of the Planning Board.
The Planning Board moves to approve Article 27 as printed in the warrant.
Mr. Smith moves approval. Is there any discussion on Article 27?
Rich Negrelli, 340 Diane Circle. Can this be explained a little bit better? Because
Well, basically what's happening is that we have 2 licenses and this would make it 5. That's the basic reason. If you'd like more explanation than that, I'm sure there's someone in the hall that could discuss it. After Mr. Smith?
At the town meeting, the town voted to have marijuana sold in the town of Abington. At the town meeting, we voted again to approve that. At that town meeting, it was suggested that the maximum we could have was 20%, which would be 2. As it turns out, the information, there can be up to 50% of the alcoholic, not for consumption on the property, which would be 5. So this is by petition. And it's in the marijuana, all of it would have to be in the marijuana overlay district. So it is it's allowed by state law. We were told at town meeting that it had to be just 20%, but that could be up to 50%. So we have another person that wants to come into town, and they brought the petition forward.
Yes. Behind you. So please state your name and address.
Rick Collins, 74 Orange Street. Just to add a little bit to this, on under state law, because the voters of Abington approved the retail marijuana law way back when, Abington had to allow at least 2 retail marijuana facilities in town. We have permitted that. They're not open yet, but they're in the process. We could have more than that, but we don't have to issue the license if a proposal comes before us and we don't like it, there's a conflict, there's something we don't like it. We don't have to issue those additional licenses. However, what this does is if there's a proposal and we like it and it makes sense for the town, we can approve it and permit it and we can open it. Again, we have already given out 2. That's all we're required to give out. This is in case something comes along that we feel like would benefit the town.
Mr. Smith, next to you, right there.
Could someone define the MOD? Do you have a map that you can show it? Because I was at the meeting that it was approved, and I thought maybe it had been changed.
Mr. Smith?
The area is mostly in the, what you could say, it would be north of Beninetti's, I'm all right. Anyway, north of that area, it's a little bit north of Vineyard Road. And it also is over on Route, which goes into a town line, and then it goes across over to Route 58, down down a little ways, down to about where the sleep shop is on that road, on Route 58.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Mike DeMarco, 30 Karen Lane. When the marijuana thing was passed, I was a real proponent for it in the town here. But I think 5 licenses is an awful lot for a small town like Abington to have. 2 is fine. Those shops aren't even open yet, so I would hope people would vote no against issuing another 5 licenses or 3 licenses.
Anything else to be heard on Article 27? Yes, please state your name and address.
How you doing? Darren Burks, North Quincy Street. I actually know 2 of the potential licensees personally, and I know that they're some of the greatest businessmen I know, and they would be a huge asset to this community. When you have more licenses available, you have more people that are able to bring in tax revenue for this community and able to keep prices down for the customers as well. We all know that marijuana has been such a huge help for so many people, even like myself with fibromyalgia in the community that we have here. So I think that it would be great to pass this proposal and this article to be able to allow great businessmen like Mr. McDonald, Mr. Nashawagi to come into our community and help us out.
Excuse me, before we sit down, could you repeat your name again? We didn't
Darren Burks. Sorry, the masks.
Yeah.
Bob?
Yes.
Gregory Belzerian, 161 Old Farm Road. If we, can we deal with this at a later time, is the bigger question. Again, if you look around here, I've been to a couple of these before, and there's a lot more people that voted on this particular thing. This is a particular article that a lot of people are very interested in. There was a ton of people who left the second that the marijuana thing was over the last time, if you remember. So with such a small amount of people here, I just don't understand this particular thing with 2 stores not even being open after 2 licenses have been granted. Again, I just don't know if there's a rule or whatever that we can push it till we can get 150 more people or whatever the normal thing is.
Well, it's an article by petition, so we really should hear it. But we need a 2/3 vote to approve the zoning bylaw change. So if there's not a 2/3 vote, then it doesn't pass.
Can they bring it up again?
I would, yes. Is it?
We have a question on the floor.
Town council has corrected me in that if we want to, if someone wants to make a motion to refer it back to the planning board, even though it's a petition article, that can happen. So it would either be a motion to refer it back to the planning board for a future town meeting, or we can have a vote and either have a 2/3 majority, which would make the change, or not have a 2/3 majority, and it would defeat it, and then they would have to come back at another town meeting with a second change. So this, you've added another option if someone wants to make that motion.
Excuse me, Mr. Moderator, we have more questions.
Okay,
Ann Manning, 34 Orange Street.
yeah.
What Mr. Collins said makes a lot of sense. If we are able to offer more licenses and they benefit the town, then we can approve them with this change. We don't have to, but we have the ability to if we decide as voters. By voting this down, you're locking yourself into the 2, and you're losing out the opportunity to get more revenue into the town.
All right, thank you. Anyone else not having spoken before?
Terry Mays, 1020 Hancock Street. I want to echo Mr. Collins. It's the ability for the planning board to approve additional licenses if it would benefit the town. And I'd like to echo what Mr. Burke said. It gives more competition in the town and greater opportunity for other businesses.
Okay, anything else to be said in the article?
Hi. Oh, that's loud. Rory Manning.
Way up top.
Rory Manning, 34 Orange Street. You've already heard from my mom a couple times tonight. As Rick and my mom both said, all this is increasing the number of licenses we could give to 5. This isn't guaranteeing that we're going to give 5 out. This isn't guaranteeing that we have to give 5 out. As she said, if we lock ourselves into the 2 we have, even though they haven't opened, we are losing revenue for this town, as many other towns around us are giving more licenses out, and we're going to lose the opportunity to make this money in the beginning. I think that it's imperative that this town takes a very active step forward very quickly, and I think that increasing the licenses to 5 will be that step we need to take.
All right, anybody else who hasn't spoken before? Up the top.
Mr. Kelly, I have a couple of points of clarification, one for Mr. Smith. On the MOD, you mentioned that it went down 58 to the sleep shop. Is that something that's changed since the original zoning, or is that, okay. The second question that I have that sort of strikes me, this is by petition. And I believe petition can be brought forward with 10 representatives of Abington, is that correct?
At an annual town meeting, you need more for a special.
Okay, could somebody tell me for this special how many people were on this petition?
100 for a special town meeting.
Okay. Is that what was on the petition, at least 100?
Yes.
So I guess my point would be, at a meeting with 75, I would think we'd want to bring it forward to an annual town meeting where we have at least 150-person quorum. For 100, a meeting of 75, I think this is relatively important, and I do believe that, I think to this gentleman's, it should be passed over or deferred back to the planning board for an annual town meeting.
Okay. Anyone else having not spoken up there in the back?
Andrew Leverall, 227 Presidential Drive, and that speaks to my point. I think we technically had a motion for deferment, which the moderator inappropriately denied, so I think we should take up that motion before we have any further debate on this article.
Could we get your name and address again, please? The mask is...
Yep. Andrew Leverall, 227 Presidential Drive.
We have the first motion to be taken up after debate will be the one about deferring it to the planning board. But I want to make sure everybody has something to, who has something to say on this says it. Way up.
Donna Gendro, 63 Pearl Street. I understand that that we want to vote on this because we don't want to pass over and miss out on an opportunity. However, I feel like this is an article that was brought before us as a petition, and we could do that again and set a different time if we feel that we want to increase the licenses to 5. So I think this time I agree that we should pass over until we have a bigger community. I'm a little clouded, I'm sorry. Until we have a bigger community input, you know, like this isn't a full town meeting, this isn't everybody, and this kind of affects my neck of the woods a little bit more than some others, and I just feel like we should pass over, and I want to second his motion.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else not having spoke? All right, go ahead. Yep.
Arthur Kraft, 175 Damon Road. We were given two options, and I think there is a third option, but I may be wrong. Can we postpone this to a time certain, that being the next annual town meeting? Or is that not an option
Well, that would be
on a
up, the
petition?
motion is to defer it to the planning board for them to decide when it would come back again. They're going
Well,
to
what I'm
review it.
asking you is a totally different option, but I'm seeing someone shaking their head down there. I don't know who. Can we postpone it to a time certain?
I'm sorry, I misunderstood the question. You can't postpone it.
Is
We
that-
we have to either vote on it here, or we can turn it back to the planning board. You just can't postpone it to another meeting. No, that's not possible.
Okay, is that because it's by petition? Or
No, it's just the way-
Are you telling me
it's
you
just
can
the way
no
it-
longer postpone to a time
It's
certain?
just the way it works. You can't postpone meetings, articles between meetings.
Is that a change in the law then?
No.
Okay.
Yes.
Kevin
Mr.
DiMaggio,
Maggio.
29 Orange Street. Speaking for myself, but I would like to hear from the petitioner, if the petitioner is here. He did come in front of the Board of Selectmen, and he did talk about trying to get on one town meeting, the annual town meeting, and now the special. He did talk about money as a small business trying to come into town, tax revenues for the town. I think it would be good if the residents heard from the petitioner himself.
Well, he's not really a petitioner because he's not a resident of the town of Abington. If he'd like to speak, we would have to have a vote of this body to see if they would allow him to speak. So, would you like to speak? Yes, I would like to speak. All right.
Through you, Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
Before we, this is me, Town Council. Before we move on, I just want to close the question that arose before. So, a motion to postpone to a time certain only applies when you're postponing it to a time within the same town meeting. But once the town meeting adjourns, all of the business of that meeting goes away.
Right.
So if you wish to have this come up again at a future meeting, then the action that you can take is to refer it back to the planning board. And then at that point, the planning board can either bring it back at a future town meeting, or it can be repetitioned, but there is no mechanism to automatically put it on a warrant for a future meeting.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Corbo.
Hi, Wendy Happel, 40 Adams Street. I just want to say that this is a minimum of 75 people that should be here tonight, and there's plenty of open seats that other people could have come here. And I actually work in Rockland, and I work directly across from the dispensary that they have there, and I can't even believe the revenue that they're probably making over there, because everybody's in and out, and it seems very peaceful. I've seen police details there, so I just think that this is a great opportunity for the town, and I would hate to miss that. We agreed on this just a couple of years ago, and it was passed, and nothing is here yet. Rockland, I think they agreed to it after our town meeting, and they're already up and running for months now. So I would just like for you all to consider this. I don't think that it's anything that's going to be crazy that's going to hurt our kids or our town. I think it's only going to benefit us.
All right, before we continue the discussion any further, I'd like to have a vote to see if we would allow a non-resident to speak on this issue. So all those who would like to have a non-resident speak on the issue, I'm going to ask you to vote yes. If you don't want him to speak on the issue, you would vote no. A majority vote will allow him to speak. So all those in favor of having a non-resident speak on the issue, please raise your hand. All those in favor of not allowing him to speak, please raise your hand. All right, it's a majority vote. So would you take the podium, identify yourself, please? Mike?
Hello, my name is Michael Nashawati. I live at 39 Hollis Ave, Braintree, Massachusetts. I'm a lifelong resident of Braintree, Massachusetts. I'm also an attorney who specializes in cannabis law. This business is not on the petition tonight, but I have an interest in bringing a cannabis business to Abington. I would really love the opportunity to be able to do business in your beautiful and amazing town that I grew up right next door to. For a little bit of history, I was the third petitioner to apply for one of the 2 permits that were available by the town. I submitted my application 2 years ago. It came in 4 days after the second petitioner submitted their complete application. So I've been involved in this process for a long time now. When I first approached the town with this business plan to potentially not only just bring a retail store, but a cultivation facility, which, you know, seeds, soil, and water. We're not smelting steel. We're not doing anything that will cause environmental issues. It's legitimately seeds, soil, and water. The more cultivation facilities that open up across the strait, the lower the prices will go, the more affordable it will become. The second component to the business is a manufacturing facility. That is the small kitchen area, it's more appropriately called the kitchen, where we would be making edibles, oils, tinctures. We would be processing the cultivated marijuana that we grow into, you know, different venues for consumption. The third component is unique to my business. I am a state Cannabis Control Commission certified economic empowerment licensee, and I've taken the social equity program with the Cannabis Control Commission, which was a 6-month program that I had to take classes on all areas of marijuana business. And because of this, we're in a unique position where we're eligible to apply to the state for a wholesale delivery license. What this would allow us to do, and what normal cannabis businesses are not allowed to do, is deliver directly to consumers while purchasing wholesale directly from cultivators and manufacturers. What benefit this would bring to Abington is not only would we be able to operate a retail store, a cultivation facility, and a manufacturing facility where we could sell wholesale to other businesses directly to consumers if the demand is there, but we would be able to travel outside of the boundaries of Abington and make sales into other municipalities. Abington would receive the 3% sales tax plus up to another 3% of the sales in the form of a community impact fee. My business is willing and able to give every sort of concession to the town of Abington if you guys would grant us our blessing in raising this cap and in allowing Abington the opportunity to consider our business. I've already had the lease in place. It's been in place for a long time. The landowner is a great guy. He's on board with this. We've had a lot of positive feedback from the community. I understand it's COVID. I understand it's difficult to get 150 people in a room right now. But I really feel like because this process was started years ago, putting it off for another 6 months or so, it's only going to ensure that businesses in other towns end up giving these delivery licenses out, and they end up, you know, delivering into Abington and taking their tax money with them. I'm asking for the town's blessing in approving this article. I understand it's a tough vote, 2/3 majority, but you know, we're not an out-of-state mega corporation trying to come in here and take your money. This is the first business I've ever started, and you know, if anybody has any questions, I'm here to answer. Thank you for listening to me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any further discussion on Article 27? Okay.
Chris Coyle, 154 Karen Lane. Wendy kind of took some of the thunder. Just to confirm, there was not a 75-person limit tonight.
No.
75-person was the minimum. Anybody in town that's a registered voter could have attended, and we would have dealt with it if space became an issue. That's correct, right?
Yes, 75 is the minimum to start the meeting as a quorum.
Okay, I just think the number of people here is being thrown around as a convenient excuse when it was not limited to that. I understand COVID is going on. That being said, many of us have been here where we've struggled, where Sean has struggled to get 150 people here to start a meeting as well. So I think the numbers game is being used conveniently as an excuse by some. I do want to thank Mr. Collins for helping clear up the fact that this is not giving 5 licenses to people. This is giving the planning board and any other board the ability to give out 5 licenses to people. We put our trust in them as the people in that position to determine that. And I feel like giving them this opportunity to handle it in the best interest of the town is the best way to handle it. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris?
Greg Belzerian, Old Farm Road. Again, this is a free market question. This entrepreneur can buy one of the other guys who hasn't opened their business already. Again, I don't know why, we want to do something that we've never done before. We just got full-day kindergarten like a year ago. It's 2020. Like, we're trying to be on the cutting edge of delivering marijuana to people's houses. I don't know, maybe the town is ready for something like that, but I think if we would do this the right way, which would be watch where other towns make mistakes, don't make those same mistakes, and be better. But again, this gentleman can buy one of the other 2 people who hasn't opened. Am I wrong with that? We don't have to have a 3rd, a 4th, or a 5th. We could have 2, see how that works. And I don't know, I don't know. There's always a lot of discussion about this. Again, I bring up the kindergarten thing because there was a lot of discussion about that, and we just did it, so thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anyone who hasn't already previously spoken? Mr. Bezanson, or?
Alex Bezanson, and I'm speaking for myself, not for the Board of Selectmen. Everybody in this room probably complains about their real estate taxes. Everybody complains when a new development wants to go into town, and they don't want buildings in their backyard, they don't want development in their backyard. The only way we're going to get tax revenue is to allow businesses or new construction. This is going to have the least impact of anything that could possibly go into Abington. The building is already there. Nobody will know what's even going on in that building. And if we don't approve this, I can't speak for the owner. I don't know the owner. But if I were him, I would not be waiting until we can get 150 people into a town meeting, which could be at least another year from now. I would be looking in another town for another facility. And we have the potential of losing millions, yes, millions of dollars in tax revenue. And he said we get the 3% sales tax and up to 3% community impact. I guarantee you it's going to be all the way up to 3%. We need the tax revenue. Everyone says our taxes are too high. This is one way to alleviate some of that. I urge you to vote in favor of this.
Thank you. Chris?
Thank you. Allison Sullivan, 121 Randolph Street. Can you just clarify what would happen if we vote no on this article? The process that would have to go forward? Would it have to be another petition? Would they have to wait a certain period of time to petition again?
Mr. Smith?
If it voted no, it wouldn't probably come up at the next town meeting. It might have to wait 2 years. But the point is that if we postpone it to spring, it probably won't come into Abington. We will have 3 spots. It doesn't necessarily mean that this gentleman will come into town, but it opens it up for 3 more facilities. Otherwise, we're just not going to have them. And I know that's, as mentioned before, we let it go for another year or so, which it probably would be. Probably wouldn't happen.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Corbo?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Moderator, to the speaker. So procedurally, what could happen is the first motion that's going to be voted on here would be a motion to refer it back to the planning board. If it's referred back to the planning board, then it can be brought back at any town meeting subject to the procedural requirements of Chapter 40A, which is first having a planning board public hearing, and then having the article put on a warrant for a town meeting, either by petition or by action of the Board of Selectmen. If that motion is defeated, then we vote on the substance of the matter, which is to either increase the limit or not to increase the limit. If it does not receive a 2/3 vote and the proposal is defeated, then the matter cannot be brought back at a subsequent town meeting for a period of 2 years unless there is a positive recommendation by a vote of a planning board at a public hearing. So either way, the matter can be brought back if it's not voted here. It's just if it receives a negative vote here, it's more difficult to bring it back because you need a positive recommendation of the planning board.
Thank you, Mr. Corbo. Steve?
I just wanted to clarify that we've had full-day kindergarten for like 3 years now. And also Brockton, they have a dispensary, and I don't know, I haven't heard anything in the Enterprise or any other newspaper that anything's been wrong or gone wrong with anyone visiting or leaving the property. So I haven't seen anything in the news or in the papers or on TV that there's been any issues with dispensaries. I don't know if anyone else can say that there was, but I mean, I think this is just a great opportunity, and I don't want to miss this for revenue for our town.
Thank you.
Darren Burks, North Quincy Street. This should be a unanimous yes. We're going through a crisis where we're watching small businesses get choked. We're watching revenue go out the window, and we have no idea what the future's going to hold for us. And we're limiting ourselves to what kind of revenue we can get and tax income we can get for our community. Like, we have to look at things like pros and cons. What is the pro by having a limit? Passing this article just says that we have the ability to give out more licenses, like everybody has said. What is the upside of not passing that? We need to put money into small business. We need to allow people to grow, and we need to stop restricting people from trying to bring revenue into Abington. Thank you.
Thank you. Up there. All right, Steve, can you get the guy in the middle here? He hasn't spoken before.
Ronald Howe, 149 Walnut Street. Move the question.
All right, the question having been moved. All those in favor of moving debate on Article 27, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed to closing debate? It's unanimous. Debate is closed. So the first vote on Article 27 then would be to defer the article to the planning board. Does everybody understand that? A yes vote would defer this back to the planning board, and they would decide where to go with it in the future. A no vote means we would then take the second vote on changing the licenses to 50% from 20%. Okay? All right. All those in favor of the motion to defer the article to the planning board, please raise your hand. All right. All those in favor of all those against referring it to the planning board, please raise your hand. All right. The motion is defeated. So the second motion would be on raising the percentage of licenses from 20% to 50%. Now, this motion needs to pass by a 2/3 vote. If I don't have a unanimous vote, I'm going to have a standing count. So if everybody understands this, a yes vote will change the bylaw to 50%, and a no vote will leave it alone. So all those in favor of Article 27, please raise your hand. All right. All those against voting no on Article 27. It's more than a 2/3 vote, but I'm going to take a count anyways. So could the counters please? All those in favor, please stand. Terry? Mr. Smith? Ms. Stark? Mr. Dion? 15? 16. Mr. Wakeland? And Ms. Dickey? All right, thank you. Please be seated. All those voting no on Article 27, please rise. All right. Ms. Mays? 1. Ms. Stark? Mr. Dion? 1. Mr. Smith? 1. Mr. Wakeland? 0. And Ms. Dickey? 5. Okay, the vote carries, well, I have 7 to 8. The vote carries 70 in favor, 8 opposed.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Thank you, Mr. Kelly. That concludes the discussion and debate for this evening's town meeting. As we request, if you could all remain in your seats, we're going to dismiss by sections so that we can keep our social distancing. I want to, again, thank you very much for your cooperation with the concerns over the coronavirus. All of us wish you all well and a happy and a safe Thanksgiving. So at this time, I'd like to call the Abington Town Meeting adjourned at the time of 8:44 p.m. on November 17th. It's hereby adjourned. At this time, could the upper left and upper right please evacuate the gymnasium and head out the closest exit door? Those in the lower bowl and in the middle, please be patient. The